We'll start with Pam Alexis. For all four of you, what vision do you have for mission? Pam Alexis.
My vision is three-pronged. Number one, we're open for business. We need to create a culture that welcomes success. To do this, we must streamline processes, provide incentives, and showcase our successes. We must work to retain people and move goods and residents efficiently. Number two, people matter. Mission is entering a growth phase, and it will be vital to maintain our strong sense of community. We must work with the school district, continue to support our nonprofit organizations in their support of our most vulnerable citizens, and ensure services are returned to mission as it grows. Number three, tourism. The time is right to promote our strong cultural and sports sectors and the endless recreational opportunities emerging in the Stave West region and along the Fraser River. Thank you.
Ian.
I see mission as becoming a world leader in a new governing system. I see us also becoming, sorry, I'm not a very slick speaker. I'm kind of nervous here. Yeah, and I want to expand campsites and beaches and bring in tourism. I'd like to build a homeless shelter so that we could treat the homeless. And based on mental health, I think that's the biggest issue here. And look at building a boardwalk and putting in a new bypass. Thank you.
Randy Hawes.
Well, my vision is, I don't think it's very complicated. I want to make sure that we are a place that continues to have solid and good government representing you. I want to make sure that we have, my vision would be that we have the housing choices that people need. We have the jobs here that people need so they don't have to commute every day. And that we are the community that our kids can grow up in and want to stay and have the opportunity to stay here along with their kids well into the future. I just think that my vision is that we are a place for everyone and that we protect our outdoors and we remain the place that is nature's backyard. That's my vision.
Wyatt Scott.
Mission is a very unique place. It's an enigma of sorts. And I think each one of us, our vision is so different, but it's so similar in a lot of ways. I'm almost 45. I have a lot of energy. I have a true vision. And I have the energy to take it forward. It includes creating an infrastructure that we're so far behind in right now. It creates an opportunity to have someone at the helm, because the pulse of your city is the leader. And so you need someone who's going to create and generate excitement, who's going to promote volunteerism, who's going to go out and be the pulse, who's going to draw in the good type of developments that we want to see. That's going to develop and shape the future. My vision is a healthy, happy mission that all of us can raise our families in together.
Thank you. Just a reminder, you each have a rebuttal card. You will be allowed one rebuttal or response should you find one of your other candidates' answers to be something that you would like to speak to. You will have one and only one rebuttal. Question number 2. Under our current council, a consultant was hired to conduct a business license fee structure review. The results and recommendations were notably controversial and subsequently deferred to the incoming council to decide next steps. What would be your plan for a new business license structure? This time we will start with Ian Gilfillan.
Well, I'm not sure about the question. I'm going to have to pass the mic.
Randy Hawes.
We came out with a new business license format several months ago, and to be blunt about it, it was a mistake. As mayor, I'll accept the blame for it. It shouldn't have gone out the way it went. It raised business license fees inordinately on a lot of businesses that should not have seen that kind of increase. I believe that we should, our business licenses are fine the way they are, except we do have some businesses in this community that cost a lot more money than others in police time and in bylaw time. And they should pay for what they use. And I'll use an example. There is some pawn shops, as an example, that really do require a lot more police supervision. And they should pay for it. We should not have to pay for that. And so that's my vision, or my wish anyway, for the business licenses. They remain about the same.
Thank you, Randy.
With those that need to pay.
Wyatt Scott.
I think when you're going to approach something like that with the business community, you should probably go out and talk to them first before you send out something alarming like that, where they immediately have to go out, get lawyers involved, and that's not creating a business environment that is conducive to generating a positive community. As a business owner in the community, got it. I think that I would have taken a much different approach with that. You go out and you create a group, maybe a community action group, and you get them together. You bring a few of the business leaders together and you say, hey guys, this is what we're thinking. What can you come up with before you go out and you hit them with something like that? So I would take a bit more pragmatic approach in the future. We do need to restructure our business licensing fees, absolutely, but that's something we can do a little bit more tactful in the future.
And Pam Alexis.
Thank you. Soon after the election, the entire subject will be returned to the new council, and I will be certainly pulling for more efficiency with respect to business licensing, because we don't want that to hold up business. And we also have to, I believe that why we originally undertook the exercise was to make the costs more appropriate to the number of services the business required. And that model just plumb didn't work, and we're just going to have to unfortunately subsidize those services because we can't make it so unaffordable that business can't operate. So it will be reviewed by the next council with all of that in mind. Thank you.
Question number 3. The public has expressed a concern over the impact of neighborhood change and a need for housing. How would you work with the housing industry on future housing supply issues as a city councillor or mayor? And we'll start with Randy Hawes.
We'll start with, we do have an official community plan, and I know that a lot of people, for example, with the Polygon proposal, believe that we should not have changed the official community plan to allow that development to move forward. But it's a living document, and it has to be subject to change as circumstances change. There's a housing choice, for example, that the Polygon proposal brings forward that I think is very much needed in this community. I was once a developer, and I'm very aware that what the development community generally does, they move to fill voids. They don't build things or want to do things that aren't going to sell. They're very responsive to community needs. So what we need to do as a council is to keep that in check. We need to make sure that there's an OCP and some good planning that goes with it, and that our infrastructure meets what the development is going to need. So we've got to make sure we've got the right sewer, water, etc., and roads.
Wyatt Scott.
I think there's a bit of a generational gap going on with what's actually happening in our community or in society as opposed to what we're talking about. So we've had these previous councils have opportunities to work with the province. In Randy's case, he was the province for 3 terms, so he had a very unique opportunity to help with those critical issues at that time. I think that we're going to have to bring some fresh ideas forward. We're going to have to try and approach this in a different manner than we have, because basically we're doing the same thing over and over again. We're saying new words or telling you new things, but we're not actually enacting and putting into drive a new course of action. So I think if we have a fresh set of eyes and a fresh group of energy on that, we might be able to come up with something a little bit more productive.
Pam Alexis.
Thank you. We're certainly seeing a change in mission. 4 years ago, we didn't see the multifamily applications come through the door, but now that's pretty much what we're seeing, because the price point has certainly dictated what people can afford. I think our biggest challenge will be the interface between the multifamily developments and the single-family developments in the same neighborhood. And there's going to have to work that will need to be done to keep that neighborhood intact and maintain that strong sense of community in neighborhoods. So it'll be our job to make sure that the new development is also good for the existing neighborhood, and that, I think, will be the tricky thing. But the multifamily development is here to stay. We were late to actually see this phenomenon, and now it's here. So we're going to have extra issues with traffic, with safety of people, and the building of sidewalks. There's going to be many issues as a result. Thank you.
Ian Gilfillan.
Well, I feel that Mission has outgrown its infrastructure, and we should take a serious look at development until the infrastructure is brought up to the code or the level of our growth. And with that being said, I think we still have to put in affordable housing for the people that need it. And thank you.
Question number 4. What municipal policies or bylaws would you introduce to protect property owners and tenants from the increased financial, fire, chemical exposure, mold, and financial risks that could result from home-based growing of cannabis when recreational cannabis is legalized in Canada next week? Wyatt Scott?
Well, I think this is probably, as a homeowner, is probably the biggest issue on your mind. Missions, I think it's got a reputation of being actually known as the marijuana growing capital of Canada. So do we embrace that, or do we fight it? With legalization coming next week, this is it's going to be a big issue, and especially with home insurance, when we've seen, you know, trying to resell a property that has had marijuana growing in it. And we're talking about devaluation of property if your neighbor is growing. This is a hot topic issue, and I don't have all the answers right now. We're going to have to sit down again, probably as a community, and really hit this hard.
Pam Alexis.
I know a number of years ago this was brought up by the Chamber of Commerce at the previous council level, and it was only touched upon in the last 4 years. But we are going to have to look at some way to make people safer in these houses. And so there is a way. There are other communities that are requiring homes to be brought up to code before it can be passed along. And so there are, I believe the banks can be involved, the city can be involved with respect to permits. So that's what we need to look at. And I don't know, I don't even remember why it was dropped, but it was something that I think that we were looking at initially. Thank you.
Ian Gilfillan.
Well, with the legalization of marijuana, we're going to have to cross a lot of new bridges. But it has to start with permits have to be in place. There have to be applications filled out and licenses issued so that everything is safe and it doesn't affect the condition of houses. Thank you.
Randy Hawes.
Well, first let me say that for the last number of years, people have been getting permits to grow medical marijuana in their homes. Mission probably has one of the sickest populations in the country because there's so many of them. There's like 800 medical grow-ops. Houses aren't greenhouses. Houses should never be used to be greenhouses. This should never have happened, and it's to fix it. I can tell you, banks aren't financing. If you've got to grow up and the banks find out, they don't refinance, and even with remediation. So some of the credit unions will. Houses need to be remediated once the grow-up's gone, number one. Number two, we've got to find a way to stop people from growing inside their houses. It's not healthy, it destroys housing stock, and like I say, no house is supposed to be a greenhouse.
Question 5. What ideas do you have to increase the supply of housing that has been called the missing middle? For example, housing that is not single family, but instead townhouses, duplexes, and row housing. Pam Alexis.
As I said earlier, we're certainly seeing these multifamily applications, and I don't know how many more we've got in the hopper, but I think there's several that I've even heard about this evening. So this is the way of the world, and this is how it's going to roll out. And again, we have to look at the interface between the existing neighborhoods and these multifamily developments. As far as encouraging them, the only issue that I have is access to green space. We've got a lot of people then in a smaller piece of land, and you've got children, and where are those children going to play? And so this is a big problem because multifamily applications don't have to pay for parkland, the 5% that single-family homes have to. So where are those children going to play? And so the green space aspect for me is crucial. How are we going to ensure that those kids have the proper spaces? Because we're limited by land as far as what the development entails and number of houses. So where are those children going to play? So that's my biggest concern.
Ian Gilfillan.
Well, it's definitely a concern. We do need low-cost housing, and how we implement that then would be a future consideration for our council. Again, the infrastructure doesn't support it, so we have to upgrade our infrastructure for that. Thank you.
Randy Hawes.
Well, multifamily is here to stay. We've now got apartments that are being built, and one of the things we're missing is rental accommodation, and part of the reason for that is that the people who would build it and own it don't like some of the landlord and tenancy laws in this province, and it's, when you start freezing rents and whatever they do, this is just the way the investment community looks at it. Tonight, I talked to somebody that's here in the audience that is looking at building some apartments that are for rental, and I applaud him for that. I think we need that kind of construction. We're going to see more apartments built. We're going to see townhouses built. In terms of green space, I have a bigger concern with some of the very small lots that have suites and parking plugging the streets and zero place for kids to play. And to be honest, I love watching kids play street hockey and that kind of stuff, and that's a disappearing thing when we get into such high density. Many of the townhouses, though, do have green space and amenity space.
Wyatt Scott.
Yeah, we're going to see a boom of multifamily dwellings. It's just a natural progression. When you have everybody from the city, they're moving out here. How do we want that to look? Do we want it to be urban sprawl, or do we want to work on a bit of a densification program? Well, when you have the densification, obviously you lose the green space, and the green space is very important. But there are other innovative and unique ways to work around that and with that. And again, you have to think outside of the box, okay? we have some opportunities maybe to do some very unique things to Mission. But you have to present those ideas forward. There's lots of opportunity in the future, and if given that opportunity, I look forward to taking us in that direction.
Question number 6. As it is up to municipalities to determine how they will work out the logistics of the legalization of marijuana as it impacts their cities, what will you do about regulating the sale of marijuana in Mission? And we start with Ian Gilfillan.
Yeah, of course, this is going to be a new issue, and we're going to have to do a lot of thinking about it. We're going to have to cross a lot of new bridges. The dispensaries are one of the ways to distribute it, but we're going to have to figure out, you know, and teach people all the rules and where they can and can't smoke it, and yeah, it's a new world out there for the legalization of marijuana. So, thank you.
Randy Hawes.
The current council has elected to say that we would allow a government-operated retail store for marijuana. That would be much like the liquor store that's run by the government. We have said we will not allow the private owners of marijuana stores for 2 years to allow the whole market to level out. Today's paper, the Solicitor General for British Columbia, Mike Farnworth, is in the paper today saying it's going to take a couple of years for all of this to settle out. There's so many unknowns that I would hope that the next council will follow through with what this council has done and say, let's not allow a big proliferation of marijuana retail stores. Let's just take it easy, wait a couple of years, let the market level out. If the government wants to open a store, fine. We'll allow a government store. Other than that, let's wait.
Wyatt Scott.
Well, again, Mission is very unique and, like Randy said, has over 800 applicants who possess grow licenses. So I think protocol from the province is probably the best route to go at first. The government is not ready for this. They are not ready for this. Like, it's beyond me how the Fed has put this forward without a plan in action for the provinces, for the municipalities. They're left to come up with this on their own. And our previous council has set out their plan. I think due process is good with any new laws, any new rules, regulations. This is going to be a big transition. What do we want our town to look like? Yeah, I don't think we want 30 pot shops hanging around, but we definitely want some unique character. And if we have that and we can highlight that and enhance that, then we should definitely try and monopolize on that as well when the time comes.
Pam Alexis.
Thank you. We have, as Randy's indicated, taken a conservative approach to the retail aspect and having only government run until we see how it's being rolled out in other communities. It will come back likely to the next council with respect to next steps. And I think our number one issue in the period where we're all trying to get used to it is enforcement in public places where cigarettes and vaping are not allowed. Then also marijuana is not allowed in those areas. And so this will be the difficulty and the task of council to make sure that is enforced. So that will be a major task, I know.
Question number 7. Mission recently selected a towing company through a bid system which allows local and out-of-city applications. The contract was awarded to an out-of-city company. Staff have authority to award contracts under $100,000. Under what guidelines or parameters would you instruct staff to award contracts in an effort to retain or increase employment in Mission? Randy Hawes.
We'll start with when you go to those tendering things, we cannot say only Mission companies. In fact, if an Alberta company under the TILMA, which is put in place by the government, if an Alberta company wanted to apply, they have every right to apply. So what happens is, council doesn't get involved in looking at those kinds of contracts. If they do, it's a slippery slope to making political decisions. You know, somebody's brother-in-law or whatever. So what happens is we have professional staff. They rated all of the applications and they picked the very best one for us. And incidentally, our local towing companies also bid for work in the other cities as well. So they will also pick the best tender. The council should not be involved in that kind of thing. It needs to be the professional staff, the police, our bylaw people, etc. That's who looks at these kind of contracts.
Wyatt Scott.
Yeah, this question actually came up on social media last week. And there is protocol, again, to putting in a tender for a bid. And those are just simple laws and regulations that are put into place, like Randy said, to have the 6 degrees of separation to make sure that you don't have a conflict of interest. I think our municipality has an opportunity to maybe do business in a better, more positive fashion, to make it more conducive to a better business arena. And maybe some people kind of feel as though there's some shady dealings going on at City Hall for various reasons, but I'm fairly certain that most of those things are done legitimately above the board. And again, I would simply follow the protocol, the rules and regulations that are in place for tending, for bidding, and all of those actions. Thank you.
Pam Alexis.
Well, the number one issue for me is fairness, and these kinds of things are handled by our purchasing department. There's a strict set of criteria that companies must go through in order to receive the bid, and we are removed from the process because we don't want anything to interfere with that fairness aspect. So that will continue.
Indian Gilfillan.
Well, I think competition is good for everyone, and as long as everyone applies for that, they should have the same rate as everyone else. That's about all I have to add to that.
Question number 8, and this will likely be our last question. What is your position on development fees as they impact housing affordability in Mission? Wyatt Scott.
Well, development is key right now. This is where we need to generate the revenue from those developers to initiate an infrastructure move. The developers, our tax dollars, this is what's paying for it. So I have a clear directive as to where and what infrastructure we need to target. If you get a chance this week, please check my website, wyattsonAmission.com. It's well laid out. It's easy to read. If you have any questions that further the infrastructure, simply get a hold of me. Again, we're at a pinch point. We're bursting at the seams. We all know this. Trying to come in from Hatzic and get across the bridge in the morning, or getting across Cedar Connector. Like, these are issues that should have been tackled many, many years ago. The foresight should have been there. So what we have to do at this point is play catch up. And that's going to take a lot of energy and a vision.
Pam Alexis.
We just completed a minor review of our DCC program, but it wasn't comprehensive enough, and that's probably the first order of business under the new council, to ensure that the cost of services are covered with the DCCs. We've had the same rate for a long time, and things have not gone down in costs, they've gone up. So that will be the first order of business. Thank you.
Ian Gilfillan.
Well, I think the same is kind of the same question as before. The infrastructure has to be upgraded, so the fees for all new applications should reflect in that, trying to play catch up with our infrastructure. Thank you.
Randy Hawes.
First, let me say that the fees that we charge here are lower or absolutely comparable to what our neighboring communities charge. Development cost charges are to pay for future infrastructure that is going to be needed, not just by the project that is being looked at, but by all of the other ones that development is going to allow to happen down the road. So all of the infrastructure that will have to be built and paid for by the taxpayer is covered with the development cost charges. That's what they're for. And so we are going to be reviewing that. But I think when people look at housing costs, the first place to look is land prices, raw land. The price of raw land has climbed dozens of times. When you're seeing acres sell for 1 acre, sell for over $1 million, a developable acre, you've got to know that's what's driving prices, is land costs.
Sean, is this my last opportunity to use this?
You may use that.
Is there any further opportunities?
We have 3 minutes. I was going to ask one more question, or you can.
You were going to ask one more question? All right, I just want to make sure this gets used, so.
The more we talk, the less time we have for questions.
All right. I'm going to use my rebuttal card at this point, you guys. I would just like to use this opportunity to say we have a really unique opportunity to take Mission somewhere great. Like, we've had the same leadership for 30 years.
Excuse me, Wyatt,
here.
pardon me.
Sorry.
Pardon me, this is a rebuttal question and not a statement.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, yeah. I think with that type of leadership, we've had the community go in one direction. And if we wanted to go in a new direction next Saturday, October 20th, let's make that happen, you guys.
So, is that we're into rebuttals now?
We can, if you would like to rebut anything, yes.
I just,
Again, this is a rebuttal. This is not a campaign statement.
I haven't heard anything really I was going to rebut, but Wyatt, a rebuttal is to rebut something somebody else said, so I'm rebutting what you just said.
Yeah. Wyatt?
I want to just rebut Randy, period. So I'm rebuttaling Randy.
Thank you for respecting the process. We are at 7:59. We will recommence in 10 minutes. Please take a quick break and be back in 10 minutes. Thank you.